Lots happening in the world politics scene as well as the U.S. politics scene, and I'm actually going to bring up some of the incidents that are going on. I know there's been a lot of criticism about what took place on Arlington Cemetery and a photo op with President or former President Trump, and of course there's some folks that have been critical of Kamala Harris and her appearance at a school function. I believe that was earlier today and everything, and of course there was even an interview with a host of social media and Stacey Abrams, so I may be giving you some of that as well. And of course, definitely one of our people had put together a interesting clip that involved what's going on in the Middle East, and I may get to that as well. But first, I think I'll let y'all check out a little bit about what Midas Touch has going on and their thoughts around the notion of what was going on with that issue that took place with the whole incident at Arlington along those lines. I'm gonna bring this up and hear maybe some of y'all's comments, and we'll see if there's some of our panelists join as well. But I will bring this up and we'll see what folks have to say about this particular incident and what Midas Touch had to say about it as well. But let's check this out, and hopefully some of the folks will come and y'all may have some comments.
The United States Army has issued a formal statement in response to the incident that took place at Arlington Cemetery, where a Trump campaign staffer got into a physical altercation with a staff member at Arlington Cemetery as Donald Trump tried to set up a photo op and campaign ad at Arlington Cemetery, which violates all of the rules of that very sacred cemetery. And in Section 60, nonetheless, which is like the most sacred spot within the sacred cemetery that is the national treasure of Arlington Cemetery. Here is the official statement. And again, it is beyond rare for the Army, the United States Army, to issue a statement like this. Here's what it says. Arlington National Cemetery routinely hosts public wreath-laying ceremonies at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier for individuals and groups who submit requests in advance. ANC conducts nearly 3,000 such public ceremonies a year without incident. Participants in the August 26th ceremony and the subsequent Section 60 visit were made aware of federal laws, Army regulations, and Department of Defense policies, which clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds. An ANC employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside. In other words, a physical altercation took place. Consistent with the decorum expected at the Arlington National Cemetery, this employee acted with professionalism and avoided further disruption. The incident was reported to the JBMHH Police Department, but the employee subsequently decided not to press charges. Therefore, the Army considers this matter closed. This incident was unfortunate, and it is also unfortunate that the ANC employee and her professionalism has been unfairly attacked. ANC is a national shrine to the honored dead of the armed forces, and its dedicated staff will continue to ensure public ceremonies are conducted with the dignity and respect the nation's fallen deserve. Haley Britsky writes that this has to be noted how rare a statement like this is from the Army. She has covered the Army for 4 years and cannot recall something similar. I've also reached out to a number of reporters who have covered the Army as well, and nobody has heard of these types of statements being issued, but no one's heard of this type of incident taking place where a political campaign goes in there and engages in a physical altercation with Arlington Cemetery staff to try to do a political ad right there. It should be noted that if you look at the Army statement, when they say that the professionalism of the Arlington Cemetery staff member had been called into question by Trump campaign people. Donald Trump's lead campaign spokesperson, Stephen Chung, said that the Arlington Cemetery staff member had mental illness, had a mental health issue, and something was mentally wrong with them. That's why the person deserved to be pushed aside. We reported about this in the Midas Touch Network 2 days ago when it first went down. It was originally reported by NPR. They did an incredible job reporting on this incident. And yeah, the Trump campaign, after Donald Trump made statements like the Medal of Freedom that he gives out to his donors is a better award than the Congressional Medal of Honor. Donald Trump calling military members suckers and losers, and calling fallen soldiers suckers and losers, as confirmed by Donald Trump's former four-star general chief of staff, John Kelly, who said Donald Trump said that as well. Donald Trump's campaign wanted that photo op on the 3-year anniversary when our soldiers in Afghanistan, 13 were killed in Afghanistan. Trump wanted to have this photo op. He wanted to be at the wreath ceremony. And his staff was told the rules. Here's how you have to behave when you're in the Arlington Cemetery. And they physically pushed the people aside. Now, I want to share with you yesterday, J.D. Vance confirmed the incident as well. And, you know, if I look at this statement here by the U.S. Army spokesperson, they seem to also be addressing Donald Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance, for the horrific statements that he said yesterday, where he's like, what's the big deal? Here's what J.D. Vance said yesterday. Play this clip.
Well, I think, first of all, the altercation at Arlington Cemetery is the media creating a story where I really don't think that there is one. There is verifiable evidence. There is verifiable evidence that the campaign was allowed to have a photographer there. There's verifiable, they were invited to have a photographer there. There's verifiable evidence that the families of these poor people who had their loved ones die 3 years ago at Abbey Road, Abbey Gate, those 13 Americans, a lot of them were there with the president. They invited him to be there and to support them. That's not an insult to the memories of their loved ones. They wanted Donald Trump there, and thank God that we have a president who stands with our veterans instead of one who runs away from them. Now,
ever find yourself in the middle of summer, the heat getting to your head and your focus just slipping away? Or
just a little bit of that particular information from Midas Touch. You might get some more of their reports as well and everything along those lines. But definitely there has been a lot of criticism of a number of things going on in that space and all along those lines and everything. So if you hold on a second, I'll let y'all hear a little bit more, and I'll bring up Sasha Starr. I know there's been some criticism of Harris as well because of some comments that she made at a high school where some folks were trying to attack her and all along those lines. But I'll bring up Sasha Starr, and I think Kim may be here with us as well and everything. But I might play a little bit more of that particular video and maybe even explain a little bit more of what was going on with the whole notion of Kamala Harris and how she got attacked earlier today for some remarks that she made and all along those lines. But we'll hear a little bit more from J.D. Vance and the response from the Midas Touch folks and all along those lines. And then we'll get into our own discussion and all in that space. But definitely let's hear a little bit more of these comments as well. And I know Kim was enjoying some of the remarks. I believe you are as well, Sasha.
This clip.
Now it is amazing to me that you have apparently somebody at Arlington Cemetery, some staff member, had a little disagreement with somebody, and the media has turned this into a national news story. You know what I think our veterans care a lot more about? That Kamala Harris's VP nominee lied about his military service. I think that our veterans care a lot more about that.
And then J.D. Vance not just doubled, he tripled down on it. And then J.D. Vance was like, what's the big deal? It's not like we were like making an ad or anything. Like we were there to like be there with fallen soldiers. Here, play this clip.
You guys in the media, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at a gravesite. He was there providing emotional support support to a lot of brave Americans who lost loved ones they never should have lost, and there happened to be a camera there, and somebody gave him permission to have that camera there.
No, JD Vance, you were quite literally there to make an ad. You were making a political advertisement, and you were cutting clips for political campaigning activity, which should not be happening in Arlington Cemetery. The veterans, I've spoken to the veterans who work for the Midas Touch Network. You see a lot of them on the show, Fred Wellman, Ken Harbaugh, and others. They were Denver Riggleman, absolutely livid at what the Trump campaign did at the Arlington Cemetery. I'm livid. The nation is livid. What a horrific thing to do. And then just so you can see like what Donald Trump's been saying this week alone, this is what Donald Trump said about the generals who worked for him. Former General Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and John Kelly. Here's Donald Trump talking about them and calling them stupid. Play the clip.
But Milley was a stupid person, very stupid. But, we have great generals, but Milley was stupid. Guys like John Kelly are he's one of the dumbest people I've ever met.
This is from this week as well. Here's what Donald Trump said about them. Play the clip.
Oh, the one confirmation was a guy that I fired, a terrible, stupid person, actually, that couldn't do the job well. And I fired him. And he sort of confirmed it. I don't know how he confirmed it, but he did.
Here's what Donald Trump said about John McCain, how Donald Trump said he prefers soldiers who are not captured. Here, play this clip.
He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you. Do you agree with that?
I mean, Donald Trump calling John McCain not a hero. I mean, how pathetic can you get right there? But Donald Trump does praise our adversaries. He does praise Putin and Kim Jong-un. Play this clip.
Xi of China, when you see Kim Jong-un of North Korea, when you see Putin and you see all of these people, they're at the top of their game, whether you like it or not, and they can't believe that this has happened to the United States. I
remember when Donald Trump was asked about sacrifices he made. Here, play this clip.
You got to say to a woman, hey, listen, you got to go to my personal doctor and I'm going to have you checked out. Is that a tough thing to say to a woman, or you just got the balls to say it?
I'll tell you, it's amazing. I can't even believe it. I've been so lucky in terms of that whole world.
You've never gotten a social disease.
It is a dangerous world out there.
It is.
Scary. It's like Vietnam, sort of like, the Vietnam era.
It is your personal Vietnam, isn't it?
It is my personal
It is. You've said that many times.
Like a great and very brave soldier.
A lot of guys who went through Vietnam came out unscathed. A lot of guys who've gone through the 80s having sex with different women came out with AIDS and all kinds of things.
They survived Vietnam.
This is better than Vietnam.
What is your take on that? Some of the things that Donald Trump said and everything along those lines. Like I said, there's a lot of conversation around the whole notion with Arlington and all along those lines, because that just happened recently and everything. So, Sasha and Rick, what is y'all's take on this?
My thought is, whose minds, whose votes will this lose for Trump? Whose mind will it change? And at this point, it's hard to imagine. I mean, the famous quote from Trump himself is he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any followers. I used to think, what could Trump do that would cause people to be so shocked that they would decide not to vote for him? And like a year ago, 2 years ago, I thought, what if he just suddenly, during one of his rallies, he just started saying the N-word like 8 times in a row? Now that would lose him maybe 1% of his followers. I don't think that anymore. I think he could do that, and people would try to explain it away. He had a stomach bug that was too hot. He was making some kind of metaphorical point. It's called sane washing. They take all the crazy crap he does and they try to put it in a context that makes it acceptable.
Yeah, what's your take on that, Sasha, and everything? I was going to bring up that apparently Harris got into some trouble today because of what some people are saying was some of that word salad stuff that she's accused of doing when she made a stop in Georgia. And I'll share a little bit about what she said and everything. But that's something that the right is criticizing her about and everything. But before I get to that, what's your take on what Donald Trump did with the Arlington Cemetery situation?
I'm surprised that people, including ourselves, spending so much time analyzing what he said and what the other idiot said, J.D. Vance, and all that stuff. This is, like for majority of people, probably it makes sense. There's nothing to think about. Oh, yep. Okay, this guy is bad. That woman is bad. Okay, all those people are bad, and it makes you feel more important and probably being more clever and so on. I understand all that, but the most important thing is unfortunately hidden because even if it's mentioned somewhere, it doesn't hit people because a lot of low information people and simply not very educated and clever people, they dismiss it simply because it's too complicated for them to look into. For example, such fact as in many books, in many stories, it's already well known that for so many years, almost 40 years, Trump being a Russian asset. It's too complicated. Trump is a Russian asset. How does it work? What means to be Russian asset? Oh, no. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. It's too complicated. It's garbage. Okay, fine. Now we know that one of people who are right behind him is an individual by the name Elon Musk. Guess what? Where Musk got the money to buy Twitter? You think, well, he's a multi-billionaire. Of course he had money to buy Twitter. Garbage. He didn't have any money to buy Twitter because although he is a billionaire on paper because his stock in Tesla costs so much money, but try to sell it, raise some money. It's impossible. There is not enough liquidity, even in a stock like Tesla, to get Musk his billions of dollars he needed to buy Twitter. So what he did is got money from Russian oligarchs who are the closest people to Putin. We are talking about Abramovich. We are talking about a few other well-known oligarchs. Abramovich probably is the best known of them. So now the guy, Elon Musk, who is very close to Trump, who's now Trump is, of course, being reinstated to Twitter or X, it doesn't matter. And most likely, if Trump would win election, then Elon Musk would get very substantial position in the new administration. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen. So he will not get administration. But he will be investigated totally with the sources of his money, because if you are the foreign supported and financed asset, there is no place for you in U.S. government. Run, do whatever business you want, make Teslas, make anything what else you want, but don't touch U.S. government. Out.
So I agree with Sasha that it's Trump's relationship with Russia is fairly simple, but it's still too complicated for people who don't want to understand it. I've been arguing with Lance on our show, Naked at Night, and before that, when it had a different name on a different network, for 8 years. And Lance yells at me, you say Trump is a Russian spy, and it's been proven to be made up by the Democrats. And that's what I've never said that. I said Trump is what the Russians call a useful idiot, easily influenced by Putin and Russian oligarchs. But even that is too complicated for people who don't want to understand. The one way it works, and Sasha can explain in a bunch of other ways it works, is if you're a Russian multi-billionaire, you only have those billions because Putin let you have them. And he could get pissed at you or feel challenged by you and take it all away and throw you in prison. The only way to turn any of those imaginary Russian billions into real money is to get that money out of the country. So you can run away when you hear word that Putin's about to arrest you. And one way to get the money out of the country is to buy Trump properties. because Trump, working with Deutsche Bank, sets up all these deals to buy stuff from Trump, and they pay crazy prices for them, way inflated, because they don't care so much, because it's imaginary money until they get it. So if you pay $80 million for a Trump property that's only worth 20, well, okay, you spent 80 imaginary millions, but now you have this actual property you can run to that's worth 20 million bucks. You can live on 20 million bucks for the rest of your life. So
you can definitely do that. But Rick, just really quickly along those same lines, I was seeing a comment that Kim made, and I don't do it as much as I used to, just because I've not been in Clubhouse in a while. But social media used to be very big on conspiracy theories, and we still hear them to this day and everything. So one of the things that Kim just talked about with the fact that Mike Lynch died, I think that was last week, on his super yacht celebrating a win in court. He was a defendant in a fraud case with HP, and his co-defendant, Stephen Chamberlain, was hit and killed while he was jogging on Saturday. So I'm sure that some of the conspiracy theorists will be out there thinking that this is all a great Illuminati type conspiracy and all along those lines. So I just wonder, is that something that you're hearing? Because I can see the conspiracy theorists going crazy over these two tragedies.
But you can roughly calculate the chances that a conspiracy theory is true by looking at past conspiracy theories to see which ones turned out to be true. I think it's like 1% that any conspiracy, like the only conspiracy theory that turned out to be true that I know of is the CIA really did conspire to bring crack to inner city Los Angeles and maybe some other cities in the 80s and use the money to buy arms, which is a crazy conspiracy, turned out to be true. Everything else, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, no proof of any of that stuff.
There's also COINTELPRO, which is definitely how they targeted a lot of minority groups, whether that was the ones that were more moderate like MLK or the more hardcore ones like the Black Panthers and everything. But COINTELPRO
was that a conspiracy, or was that just J. Edgar Hoover being an asshole?
It's probably just J. Edgar. Probably just Hoover being an asshole and targeting groups that he didn't like and everything. Just really quickly, because I did say I was going to get to that, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. But I know that later on today we'll have the interview with Vice President Harris and Tim and Governor Walz and everything. And apparently they were in Georgia earlier today, visited a marching band at Liberty County High School on their 2-day bus tour. And the vice president shared her thoughts on leadership and teamwork. And some of the critics are painting her comments as painful to watch, because apparently he introduced Harris as a really great head coach and the next president of the United States. And apparently said, we want to come by to let you know that our country is counting on all of you. You are leaders by the very fact that you are here in this room. Harris said with a big hand and arm gesture. She continued talking, apparently with some of that shortened sentences that she does and everything. Since she said, doing what you do at this incredible school, doing it as one big team, understanding all the different parts that fit together to create a team. She said, you are doing some of the best work any of you can do, and we're so proud of you and we're counting on you. And then she further elaborated on her thoughts about leadership, your generation, all that you guys stand for, everything you have at stake. It's what's going to propel our country into the next era of what we can do. And like I said, some of the folks on the left are being critical and everything like that, even though she said apparently she grew more inspirational as she talked. And she said, and I wanted to say to you that you must always lead as you have chosen to lead. Understand that you don't have to ask anybody's permission. And I think you can all figure that out. You've decided to be a leader. And in doing that, you are also role models, right? Welcome to the Role Model Club. Being a role model, right, means that you are a member of your family, live in your neighborhood, your classmates who watch you and see that's how it's done. And apparently she shared some more wisdom and all along those lines. But some of the Republicans and others, even though MSNBC anchor Gene Psaki praised her for the authenticity, there are definitely some social media folks that are going at her, including the Trump War Room, which said, why is Kamala speaking to those high schoolers as if they're toddlers? And the Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk said, Kamala Harris goes full kindergarten teacher mode while explaining what teamwork means to a group of high schoolers. Painful to watch and everything. So like I said,
they are the conservatives already had this loaded in their chamber, ready to say it. And like, I was listening to Adam Carolla saying you should always have an FU in your chamber. It should always be on the tip of your tongue, because you never know when somebody's going to do something that pisses you off and you don't want to fumble it. And FU always works. And so the same thing with the talking points. We knew, that if she stumbled at all on an answer, that word salad would, come out of hundreds of tweets, and it will show up all over TV. They'll roll the clip. We don't know yet how good or bad her answers were in general, but I guess there was one answer that kind of wasn't as concise or as sharp as it could have been, and they're yelling word salad. And I haven't seen the clip yet, but
yeah, we'll check out this clip, and like I said, she'll be talking later and everything. Hey, Sasha, I know that sometimes you talk about the protesters and the Palestinian protesters and all along those lines, but apparently the group that backed off of supporting Kamala during the DNC has now turned around and said that it has changed its mind again. So the group Muslim Women for Harris Waltz had rescinded its support last week, saying that it couldn't move forward in good consciousness after they couldn't get their Palestinian speaker and everything. But on Wednesday evening, would have been yesterday, the group released another statement which it claimed it's setting the record straight and moving forward. So the group has apparently re-endorsed Harris and noted that the only other person who could realistically win the White House in November is former President Donald Trump, and I don't think that they want that. So it looks like they are definitely coming back and throwing back their support, because they said it was less than 70 days until the November election. We have to be honest with ourselves about what is at stake here for Muslim women, our reproductive rights, access to health care, climate change, immigration reform, access to quality public health education, economic opportunity, and the clear danger a Trump presidency could pose for our Black and brown community. So it looks like they are going back into the camp for Harris and Waltz and everything. And I was actually thinking they were going to do that as well. But just your take on that, because I do know that they were concerned and they wanted that speaker and doing the DNC, which they did not get. And now they're going like, no, we don't want Trump.
But you make it extremely difficult to have any takes on this or that, because when you're reading something for 10 minutes, you have question and answer and more question and answer all at the same time. And I don't know what I contribute to that. You said something, you explain why, you make the answers, and you read more and you answer that as well. What can I say now?
No, like I said, if you got any comments just about the...
My comment is only one, that I really wish that these women would be a little bit quieter about all this nonsense what they're talking about, because Israel is having now an extremely difficult time fighting this Gaza bandits and now Hezbollah. Of course, Israel is still so superior to this that it can deal with all that. But still, the life there is miserable. And a lot of people in Israel are very unhappy about it, but they will never agree to anything less than right to defend their country and their people.
There might be an opportunity for Israel and the Harris campaign to pull out something like that looks like a little ceasefire. They just had the first case of polio in Gaza in, I don't know, forever. Some 10-month-old baby, and they've been negotiating for a really short ceasefire to get in there and vaccinate everybody in Gaza. And I don't know, talks have been going on, and Israel's like, no complete ceasefire, but in Rafah we'll back off for a while to let people get in. Whatever agreement they come up with to reduce, the offensive, to get people vaccinated, Kamala Harris somebody at the White House should make a big deal out of that, because that's like kind of a ceasefire. I don't know if they will, but they frickin' should.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see them doing that and everything along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, and if anybody goes on that. Does anybody think that this, what are you looking for and what do you hope to see in this interview that'll be taking place later on this afternoon and everything? I know I'm going to be trying to catch some of it, but Sasha and Rick, what is your take?
I'm not very excited about this interview because it will be she and What's his name? Tim. I said Vance. No, it's Tim Walz, I think. Yeah, Tim Walz. So it will be interview, and they're going to hide behind each other. I don't understand what's the purpose of having them both interviewed. I just don't get it. But they're getting what they're getting. There's nothing.
So I'm looking for few mistakes, few things that the other side can capitalize on to to make people who are on the fence not vote for Harris. And apparently, according CNN's already released this clip of, which I haven't had time to see yet, of her giving kind of a meandering answer. So for the first 5-6 weeks of the campaign, she avoided meandering answers, but she gave one tonight, or will give one. It was pre-taped, and I don't want a bunch of those. I just looked up this is from an hour ago. Israel has agreed for pauses in fighting in Gaza in September. The pauses will start September 1st and will be split into three-day phases to allow people to go in there and vaccinate kids against polio. So I want to see the White House, saying, look what we did, or look what we helped do.
And that's that's for the entire month of September?
No, just starting September 1st, they're going to do three-day pauses, phases.
Right.
So I assume that each phase won't be the entire area of Gaza, but they'll do the bottom third of Gaza for 3 days, then the middle, then the top, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense and everything. I can see them doing it.
And the deal is that this won't affect the outcome of the war, because Israel has 300,000 soldiers. And I think that after 11 months of fighting, Hamas is probably down to fewer than 10,000 fighters.
What did you take, and this is for both of you, on the independents? Because I did hear, I think it was earlier today, that Trump is actually ahead among the independents, which actually somewhat surprised me and everything. But what is your take on the independents? And do you think that it is a toss-up with the independents, or do you think that he is ahead?
Yes, nobody can tell. Polls are inaccurate because people don't like taking polls, so they get worse every year. And so we don't know. They and just historically, I say this all the time, the last election where any candidate for president got more than 53% of the vote was in 1988. It's always a toss-up.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how that plays and everything along those lines. So we'll see if that's a major toss-up or anything. I know tomorrow you'll be discussing it, Sasha, but what is the latest news coming out of Ukraine and all in that space and everything? Because I know the Ukraine is on the offensive, and rightfully so. But what is your take on what's going on, and are we going to see Crimea fall in the near future? Because I know you and Jonathan have been talking about that for a while and everything. But of course, Ukraine has been taking the war into Russia and everything. And I did hear that they have even shot down some planes and all along those lines. But just your take, and I know you're going into detail on tomorrow on your show and everything, but what is your take on what's happening?
Situation is very simple. Ukraine provided clear proof that it can fight on Russian territory, and it can get even more and more Russian territory, provided that it has necessary ammunition, weapons to do it. If they have unconditional permission to hit the Russian targets with Western supplied missiles. If that conditions would be satisfied, Russia will be done and over in even probably before the winter, because Ukrainians have proved that they can go through Russian, I wouldn't even call defenses. There are no defenses. All Russian territory is completely defenseless. So they can go like a knife through the butter, provided that they have necessary ammunition. But see, the problem is that the West is just fucking scared of this so-called red lines, that Putin will use the red button and there will be a thermonuclear war. What the hell you're talking about? Ukraine is invading Russian territory and holding it now for almost a month. And Putin yesterday, actually, he had a speech where he confirmed that there will be no nuclear weapons used in this war. And when Modi was in Ukraine, he spoke to Zelensky and he spoke to Putin one more time, telling him not even to think about using the nuclear weapons. So there is a green light everywhere. You can march in. Russia is not going to use nuclear weapon. Listen, if it's going to use it, okay, everybody will be killed and going to hell or to somewhere else. There are so much nuclear weapons being already that it's actually by accident that it hasn't been used, and the world's still surviving. So what's the big news about Putin will use a nuclear weapon? What's the big deal about it? Nuclear weapons or nuclear weapon, yeah, a lot of people will die. Some estimates are 170 million, some other estimates about 2 billion people. It's a lot of people who would argue. But that's a price of being a free man, instead of being told by Putin, do this, get me this, why don't you do that? I don't feel well today. You know what? Just go to hell, and so he will act like this.
Yeah, Sasha,
a couple of things. So I recommend reading a book called Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen, which explains how, our not having had a nuclear exchange with Russia has, to some extent, been just good luck, because the deterrent, the systems in place are not super great. And we have 1,700 warheads. Russia, 1,700 warheads. Way too many, 100 times, like 20 times as many warheads as it would take to destroy the whole northern hemisphere for years and years.
Hold a second.
Yes?
Mark, what's up?
Hold on a second, background noise on my side. Hold on a second, see if I can get rid of that and everything. But hold on, that's on my side.
All right, well, you're doing that. Let me say one more thing, which is, unfortunately, Ukraine only holds about 1% of as much Russian land as Russia holds Ukrainian land. So it's, Ukraine holds, 800 square miles? Russia holds 70,000 square miles.
I have a question for Sasha, because I can understand it if somebody is 62, which is my age and everything, or somebody's older, because I know you're older, as is Nick, and I think Rick might even be a little older as well. But I do know for a fact, because he's talked about it, that Rick has a young daughter. I think you've had grandchildren, and I've got nephews that are 15 or 16. So it is easy for somebody that maybe only has another, if we're lucky, 20 years, if we're going by the average of a lifetime, or maybe even another couple of years, if we're going by the averages and everything, to live and everything. But what is your answer to those folks that are literally just beginning their life? Because those are the ones that are more concerned about a nuclear war, the Gen X and the millennials, because they're sitting there going like, I got an entire life to live, so therefore I don't want my life gone by a nuclear war. So what is your answer to those folks? We can say it because we're older and everything, but what's your answer to somebody like Rick's daughter or my nephews who are literally 15 and 16?
Unfortunately, the nuclear exchange will not choose between older and younger people, between males and females, between whites and blacks, or so on. The problem with this, problem is that Russia has been an enemy of the Western culture and civilization, if you will, for the last 1,000 years, and especially for the last 80 years after the Second World War, when Russia also got access to nuclear weapons. So it was already engraved in stone that one side can destroy the other side, and the other side can destroy the first side. It's a mutual assured destruction. This concept is not necessarily should be implemented simply because, as we say with Dr. Lockwood on Ukrainian shows, there is a way to make Russian nuclear weapons or absolutely useless. There is a way to do it. However, I believe there's not enough imagination, and like people, even in government and specifically in government, they're looking for simple solution. They're looking for a solution. Okay, so Russians have 1,700 warheads, so we have 1,700. So why don't we make another 3, 5, 10,000 warheads? So we will be ahead of Russia. It's fairly simple because technology is there, and it's almost like
each side used to have 6,000, but like I don't think we could negotiate with Putin to knock down our numbers.
There is another problem that China, by the year 2035, will have 1,500 warheads, or maybe even 70, because they're going to match Russia and the US. But even today, it was already published by Pentagon, US cannot fight both China and the Russian nuclear wars at the same time. So this is why US has to continue to build up instead of implementing something very similar what Ronald Reagan had, the Star Wars system, except that today technology actually exists. At the time of Reagan, there was no technology, so it was a big bluff, which actually worked quite well.
Yeah, it brought down the Soviet Union. If you want to increase your chances, if you believe nuclear war might happen, you can move to the southern hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand, because the war will happen mostly in the northern hemisphere. And if enough bombs go off, it'll cause nuclear winter for several years in the north and starvation. Southern hemisphere won't get hit as hard.
Well, it's unclear whether it's a third phase of nuclear exchange. It's a nuclear winter, because there are 2 other stages that are quite cumbersome. I'm not going to describe them, but the nuclear winter, it's unclear whether it will be only in a northern hemisphere or it will be all over the world. It's very unclear. It depends probably of the blown warheads and so on. So that's unclear. There could be overall nuclear winter, and so southern hemisphere may not be so much better place to be than northern hemisphere. That's for sure. But listen, this is so a natural process, because look, we, our children, our grandchildren, sooner or later, we will die anyway. You cannot escape death. So it will be either natural death, or you will get sick for something, or there will be a nuclear exchange. The result is very similar. You will be dead. It just depends on when and which way.
All right, so to change the subject back to
it would make a big tragedy of nuclear war at all.
To go back to the election, I have a strategy for Harris. There are about 69 days left until voting day. I think she should have a rally just about every frickin' day. Remember, in 2016, Clinton didn't have enough rallies. She didn't visit enough states. Some states got pissed off, like, I don't know, was it Wisconsin, that she didn't ever visit them? She should be out there on the road. She's young. She's 59. She has the stamina for it. Trump is 78, kind of unhealthy. Just run him into the ground. Just have a rally. Make him feel like he has to have a rally, 5 a week. And, the more tired he gets, maybe the more crazy and dumb he gets. And he either, he has a fainting spell, or he says some really terrible stuff.
There is also a factor that Kamala Harris raised way much more money than Trump. So what she can do with her staff, they can book all venues in the United States for the next 2 months. So Trump, he won't even have a normal place to hold his stupid rally because all places are booked. And this way, that's another clever way to prevent him from speaking. Now, coming back to Russia, it's mind-boggling that while Russia is arch enemy of the West, including the United States, you considering to put in a White House and administration people who colluded with Russia, who are the Russian assets, who are being financed by Russians. How dare you are? What idiotic country are you? Explain it to me, please.
People get compromised. I can't explain it. It's crazy. Well, I can explain some of it. It's cheap to do propaganda. Russia spends $30 million a year to flood Western democracies with bullshit that makes people angry and crazy and divided. $30 million is nothing.
And speaking of divided and everything, that's the clip I was trying to find and everything. But this is Hassan and everything. And he has a clip with not Kamala Harris, but with Stacey Abrams. And they even talk about that divide and her views on the strategy for the Democrats. So let's hear this and hear y'all's response back to it.
Bill for the Democratic Party.
I think we are positioned
It might help if I actually get played.
to win. We cannot ignore, in fact, we should lift up and celebrate the historical nature of this ticket, the fact that we have 2 Gen Xers on the ticket. And you may have heard, Vice President Harris is the first Black woman, the first South Asian woman.
I got the memo.
Yes, and so people have noticed that.
Yes.
But I think what's also a part of this moment is it feels like not only a corner has been turned, it feels like newness has returned to our politics. And we've survived. 4 years of Donald Trump, we thrived, I think, in terms of what was delivered by a Biden administration. But for anyone who's gone through difficult times, there's a bit of trauma associated with the last 8 years. And I think Vice President Harris and Governor Walz feel like something new, something different, something we haven't felt or seen in a while.
Getting a little serious here, as a minority in this country, I always have my spidey sense on when it comes to politics. We can be deeply pessimistic, at times nihilistic when it comes to the political process. I'm an Indian man, you're a Black woman. Kamala Harris is Voltron of me and you.
There you go.
So let's just racist game theory this out. Is this country too racist and sexist to elect a Black woman as president?
Demographics aren't destiny, they are opportunity. But what that means in this moment is that coalitions get built because of possibility. The coalition that brings together the growing South Asian population in the United States, that brings together a Black population that feels sometimes taken for granted, often oppressed, and certainly discounted too often by politicians. They can come together with those whose tendency is not to elect either Black or brown.
So she can be the thing that unites people that...
She can. She's a Rorschach test.
Okay.
And for whomever you are, you see something in her that you can get along with. We're not all going to be on the same WhatsApp chat, but we're all going to see something in her that says this is what we want. And it's that coalition building, that convergence that she serves, Voltron, if you will, her ability to bring all of those things together, connect all those pieces. That's how we get to victory.
But what happens, which is very common in politics right now, is identity politics. Mm-hmm. Both parties do this. And obviously, Donald Trump questioned Vice President Harris's Blackness, which of course he's going to do. He's a weirdo. He can be psychotic at times. Of course it's going to happen. But then people in the Black community have also questioned Vice President Harris's Blackness. I did a scientific poll by reading the comment section of Charlemagne the God's Instagram page when Vice President Harris went to the Breakfast Club. Mm-hmm. Here's what I found. We got Dr. Mr. Boy 27. Sometimes she's Indian, sometimes she's Black. We got Young _237. She was sworn into the United States Senate as the first Indian American woman. Not Black, not African American, Indian American. She only claims Black around this time. 2,426 likes. L Showtime 85, BLM only during election, laughing face, laughing face, laughing face. I am genuinely curious. This is not a baiting question.
Okay.
What What do you think about this conversation? Because it confuses me.
I'm not confused by the conversation, and I'm not concerned by it because this conversation happens. It's happening in public because we are at a place where it's now a national discussion.
Right.
But here's the reality. We live in a nation, and I need you to lean in for this.
Sure.
Race has impact in this country.
Yes.
It colors how we see things.
Of course.
And for communities that have never been seen or heard, they are now being weaponized to diminish her capacity and her possibilities. The intention of pitting her Blackness against her Indian heritage is designed to say that we can't get along.
Right.
Designed to say that these two things can't coexist.
Because I was confused where I was like, guys, someone can be biracial.
In fact, it's a whole section in the census.
Yeah. Yes.
But it gets likes.
Right.
It gets commentary.
And why does that identity have to be in conflict with one another?
Because
again, I'm confused. I was
Because
like, I don't understand.
one of the best ways to win a war, to win a battle, is to pit possible allies against each other.
So I really agree with that. And that was a feeling I could not articulate. Yeah. This is not new. I feel both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party lean into identity. And I agree with what you're saying. Identity is intrinsic to who we are. There's no, and I don't want to fall down that trap of never make it an identity. Identity has nothing to do with it. That's like a bad faith argument. But are you afraid that when it gets to this point, it takes on a life of its own? You know how when you do Hot Ones, the show, and there's 6 Hot Ones bottles? And I'm like, let's keep it at 4. Do you feel like taking identity this far, it becomes a distraction?
I don't think it becomes a distraction for the people who actually know what you're talking about. And for the people for whom it is a distraction, they've never engaged the conversation. I'm a Black woman from the South. We've talked about race. We've talked about color. We've talked about shades. Every community that has had melanin or doesn't have melanin has conversations about color. The question is whether we allow that to distract us from the underlying question. This isn't a question of her race. This is a question of her capacity. And they are trying to pit communities against one another because the undertone and the dog whistle is whether she can have the job.
I think there's somebody else who agrees with you and has an additional statement.
And that is?
At Dark Shadow DJ.
Okay.
Who cares if she's Black or not? What them policies look like.
I could have said it more succinctly, so thank you, Dark Shadow.
You've campaigned and fought the good fight, and you know what it takes to get on the campaign trail and message. What advice would you give the Harris-Walz bill, knowing some of the uphill battles that you clearly faced in Georgia, that she's clearly facing with the distraction nonsense of the comment section, that then becomes weaponized and literally, like the New York Times, the media, it becomes weeks-long stories. This is why it was a long walk to get to Dark Shadow DJ, because the long division of all this nonsense was yeah, this is a waste of time and it's a distraction. Do you have any advice for them, knowing that this is going to constantly be weaponized?
Keep doing what you're doing. They have enjoyed a fairly steady stream of positive press because they are actually talking to people in the language and in the moment that people need to hear. And so I think that anyone who's telling you you need to shift your strategy and shift your tactics, that person should not be listened to, because what's working is that young people who didn't hear themselves are now hearing policies that appeal to them. What's working is that communities of color who felt that they were being shunted aside by the possibility of a Trump administration now see the possibility of regaining and reclaiming their space. Do not get distracted by the naysayers and the bots, because we can't always tell which is which.
What's your take on that and everything?
So the U.S. is still 60% white, depending on how you calculate it. But it's still majority white. That'll change over the next 10, 20 years. And, a lot of white people are great. A lot of white people are a-holes, just like anybody else. These are factors. Obama was he had a Black parent and a white parent. That maybe made him, and he was very careful not to be angry and threatening. His wife, 2 Black parents, looked darker. She got a lot of shit, ridiculous shit, that some of which probably, was because of that. Harris, she's Black, she's Indian, she's got nice, straight, white lady hair. Maybe that'll help. I don't freaking know. She's married to a white guy, but he's Jewish. Her stepkids are white, but her stepdaughter is a hipster with tattoos. Maybe the Republicans were trying to make that a weird issue. Her VP is as white as they come, as white as macaroni and cheese. Who knows?
But he's got a neurodivergent child, so they tried to make that.
Oh yeah, they went after that. Yeah, freaking, they're grasping at everything.
I just don't understand why she and all the Democratic Party is not pounding on the well-known fact that Trump is a conman. He is a convicted criminal. And you say nothing else. You don't need anything else. Plus abortion issue. That's all 2 things you need to win the election. You don't need 3 things or 5 things or 11 things. It's too complicated. People in the United States can take only very short message, 5 words maximum, 3 words even better. Conman, convicted criminal against abortion and to exploit women.
1 word, rapist, convicted
rapist. So that's all. What else do we need? Why you make it complicated? Don't make it complicated. Very simple message. Conman, racist, convicted criminal, raping women, exploiting women, and there are so many things, but you don't make it so complicated. You make 2, maximum 3 issues, period, and repeat it 75 times a day on all channels and in everywhere else. That's all what you need. Don't try to make yourself as a princess that you're so great and you're a prosecutor and you're this or that. It doesn't matter what you are. Let's say you never been prosecutor, you never been anybody. You were a dishwasher all your life. It doesn't matter because you're running against criminal, you're running against conman, you're running against the man who wants to forbid all the abortions and access to medical care and so on. That's all what you need.
And you got a bunch more money. The Democrats now have tens, maybe hundreds of millions more dollars to buy ad time to go after it.
You don't even always have to buy the ad time, because one of the videos that I didn't play this time around and everything was actually a Trump campaign and everything, and there was less people at the beginning of the campaign at the rally than there were at the start of the rally. And I think that the reporters had asked the people why they were leaving, and they were saying that he was starting to get into some of that rambling that Trump does and everything, and they had gotten frustrated, so they literally left. I think that it was maybe about half the House of what it was when it started, and it wasn't like a overwhelming big crowd at the beginning, but it was definitely a number of folks that left, including one that was a Trump voter in 2020, and she was like, no, I remember now why I'm probably not going to vote for him this time around, because she was thrown off by some of his rambling answers and some of his,
which is why they should have Harris should have a zillion rallies. She's doing some bus tour across some freaking state now. That's how you do it. You don't get on a little plane. You just freaking get on a bus. You have a rally. You drive to the next community, next place that has an arena, that 15,000, 20,000. You have another rally. It kicks your ass, but at the end, you maybe get to be president.
Yep. Definitely, that's it.
The holding rally is not a simple thing. Okay, I took my time. Last week, I saw latest Trump's rally. And what he's doing, apparently he's an entertainer in a style of late Jackie Mason. So he's making, of course, he's not as talented as Jackie Mason by any stretch, but you see, he's going around some stuff, and he laughs, and he stops, and then he says, how do you like it? Oh, you really like it, and I like it too. And he's going with the stupidest shtick around, and people who are coming to the rally and they worship him anyway. It doesn't matter what he says and what he does. They're just worshiping him, and he's using that, and he's talking about for an hour and a half about nothing. He's talking about absolute nothings. And this is what you call his rally. And these stupid people who are attending his rally, they're going to vote for him. Idiots. complete.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, it's a shtick. Like, if you ever watch Jay Leno on the Tonight Show, I mean, he's gone from a lot of times he would say something and get a big laugh, even though it wasn't a joke, because he would say it like, "Hey, you heard about this? Da 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 da." And if you say it like that,
he's professional comedian,
right?
Trump
But
is,
if you say something like a joke, people will laugh even if there's no joke in it. And Trump is like, da, 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 da. He's a sticky guy, like you're saying.
Yeah, he's definitely a sticky guy. We're getting to wind down, but apparently he's also getting in trouble with the entertainers because Foo Fighters said they did not okay Trump using My Hero at the Arizona rally, and they said they're going to donate part of their royalties to other folks as well, but it won't be for the Trump campaign. And even Jack White is threatened to sue the Trump campaign over use of the Seven Nation Army, and Trump apparently is using Beyonce, even though Beyonce is a Harris supporter, Celine Dion, and Foo Fighter music during the U.S. election campaign. So he's running all kinds of hot water.
It gives Harris one more one-word talking point: chaos.
Right.
You want 4 more years of crazy crap every day coming out of Trump.
and look at how he talks about his generals at the beginning of the program. He fired that guy. This one was not good enough to do his job. So why did he hire them in the first place? So that's his responsibility, that he cannot hire the right people. So he is firing all other people, and it's a mess. It's a complete mess. That's not the place to run a government. And this guy, even in 8 years ago, he should not be allowed even to come even close to White House, to even election, even to be on the panel, to be one of the electors.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm hoping at some point in my lifetime, 90% of Americans will look back on the Trump era as some crazy blip in, some nervous breakdown that we were healing from.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be the case, but we're going to get on out of here. World politics is ended. We've got Coco McMillan coming up, and actually her show is already going on and everything. And I know that Sasha's got Ukraine, Russia, and China on tomorrow, as well as our regular World Edition. So we'll have a number of great programs on tomorrow as well. But right now, time to get on out of here.
Bye-bye.